I'll let these guys properly introduce themselves, but I just wanted to say, number one, thanks for being here. We feel so honored to host Gosnold and host Kevin. And I also just wanted to say that I know that raising, and I can sense that raising teenagers is intense and complicated and wonderful and all those good things too. And this subject is intense and complicated too, but I just want to say that we've got you, you're supported, we're going to do this together, and hopefully this will just be one of many conversations that we have. So I'll leave it to these guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Claire. So good evening, everyone. Happy to say that your kids were great and interactive and well behaved. I can only hope that they got something out of it. I'm hoping to kind of bookend this presentation with, I decided to present the same presentation to you. I was going to do two completely different presentations, but I thought I can do the same presentation twice, but with different focus. And that way you can go home and kind of echo, you'll understand what they saw, and some of the key points. And so hopefully we can keep the conversation going. It's not a one and done thing. As Claire just said, we can't do this alone, So my name is Kevin Rosario. I am the Director of Community Outreach for Gosnold Behavioral Health. Gosnold is a mental health and substance use disorder organization. Corporate's in Falmouth. There's a medical detox there, and we have inpatient rehab and sober living, and we have 5 outpatient locations. We have a small office actually here on Nantucket. It's on Old South Road, and we have a big office in Centerville. We have a smaller office in Falmouth. We have one in Stoughton, the Brockton area, and one in North Dartmouth for the kind of the New Bedford Fall River area. And we help folks to have primary anxiety, depression on an outpatient basis, and then we have the more acute inpatient programs for detox and rehab and stuff like that. I'm not here to sell Gosnold, I'm just telling you where we're from, and we are excited to say that it's our 50-year anniversary. So it's an organization that's been around for a long time, started in 1972, not-for-profit, which means they take all insurances, private insurance, state insurance, and try to help as many people as we can. And one kind of arm or initiative of Gosnold has always been prevention, education, and community collaboration, to try to be a resource and just go out there and let people know what we do and try to be available and try to be an educator. Also with me I have Keith Schaefer, he's the Director of Marketing and Alumni. I also have Sarah Anton, Director of Development. I have Jordan, and I keep messing up your name, I'm sorry, Toffolo. She's also in marketing, and she's helping with Keith. She actually just started this week, so we're happy to have her and excited to have her. And also have Candace Kelly here. Raise your hand real quick. So Candace is actually the facilitator of the Nantucket Family Support Group. So it's an ongoing weekly family support group. If you would like a local resource and kind of keep that conversation going, please go see Candace. So that's kind of the team, and I'm grateful to you guys that they gave up their whole day to come here. This is not even part of my actual job. I'm the Director of Business Development. My primary role is really to kind of cultivate and develop business relationships for Gosnold. But because of who I am and because of who Gosnold is, I feel blessed that I get to do this. I'm a nationally certified recovery coach, I'm a nationally certified family coach, and I'm a nationally certified intervention professional. Excuse me. I've been with Gosnold for 8 years now, and I started off with recovery coaching and family coaching and intervention. I have a long history in sales, and most importantly, the most important asset that I have is I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is that I made a lot of bad decisions as a young person, and that's why I particularly like this age group, because I experimented for the first time in 7th grade. And it was not a big deal for many years, and through high school, it kind of got a little worse, and then ultimately I became full-blown addicted to drugs, and alcoholism led to a pill addiction, which led to heroin addiction, which almost took my life, and as part of the gratitude of being in recovery and having this beautiful life that I have now, just have a passion, and I feel like a sense of duty to go out in the world and let people know there is hope, and to share some of my experiences with anybody that'll hear it in hopes to divert someone from the stuff that I went through and that I put my family through, so I'm an open book after this. If you have a question in between, I don't want to lecture, I may ask questions just to keep you alive. I know it's gloomy Thursday night. I don't want to be the clear eyes guy that just reads slides. Like I'm definitely not that guy. I'm going to have the hardest time staying in this corner so Keith can record me, because that's not my thing. I want to go up and down the aisle, right? But this is more just a conversation for us to have. This isn't God's word. This isn't black and white. This is just a topic and an opportunity to have a discussion and hit some key points, and then maybe keep the dialogue going. Fair enough? All right. So let's get going. So obviously just a few bullets that I want to hope to touch on. Some basic like addiction 101, some risk factors. The Juul, e-cig, vaping is a huge thing. I know some of you know more than, he's probably identified with this more than you'd like. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then more importantly, refusal skills that I brought up with the kids that you can echo back to them. And also maybe have some conversation around, well, what do I say? How do I say? Maybe some tips on how do we have this conversation? What's appropriate? What's the language? At what age? Those are the things that I think people, want to know. It's hard. And there's no book. There's no parent handbook that said, in 6th grade, we're going to talk about sex. And in 7th grade, we're going to talk about e-cigarettes. It's like, you kind of just got to wing it. And different kids at different ages have different levels of maturity. And it might not happen for 5 years from now, but maybe some of these topics and skills can be used down the road. So hopefully you gain something out of it. First slide is all about awareness. A lot of the stuff that I do is not just educational. Gosnold has always been big on anti-stigma. A lot of people do not seek help for mental health conditions, as well as potential drinking problems, as well as drug problems, because they're so afraid of what people think. They're afraid of what society will think, right? They're afraid of the very real possible consequences of coming out and being honest about struggling with mental health, anxiety, depression, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, right? And there's also this myth that it's them that has the problem. Maybe a certain demographic. Even before I had my own issues, if you ask me what an alcoholic was, right? I think of the guy with the brown bag, New Bedford, police bus terminal. He's roaming around, he's dirty, he's got a beard, he's got, a 40 ounce in a brown bag, he's asking for change. That's an alcoholic. That guy is the minority of alcoholics. The average alcoholic looks like us. They work, they put their kids through college, they're good, functioning, awesome people. But they require a certain amount of alcohol every day to kind of get them through. There's a lot of high functioning alcoholics. Same thing if you said, you're a drug addict. Drug addict, I think of like homeless people and women that are selling their body on the street, and I automatically think of needles. But the majority of people that are addicted to substances hold jobs and pay bills, and they're not, like that's the far end of the spectrum, and just to try to have the conversation to raise awareness and to say that it's not an isolated situation and that we're not alone, right? Because there's a statistic that says, and out of all this thing, 2.5% of all people that are reported that had substance use disorder were adolescents under the age of 18, right? That's 7.8 million young people. And then out of the population of 329 million people in the United States, 67% of all Americans report that they've been affected by addiction directly or indirectly. That doesn't mean they all have addictional issues, but they've been affected. The word affected means, I'm not trying to talk, I know you guys know what the word affected means, but bear with me, right? A loved one, a neighbor, right? We all know someone that was an alcoholic or a drug addict or got a DUI or had a problem in the past. So that statistic, in my opinion, is probably low. But there are still some people, which is, kind of frustrating for me, I guess, but I've accepted it. There are still some people in some pockets that'll say, it doesn't happen here, it won't happen to me, not us. And there's a lot of denial about the scope of how many people are actually affected, the percentages, So just to kind of throw that statistic out. So what is addiction? I'll fly through some of this stuff. I feel like I spent more time on this with the kids because, they might not know about it. They might not have heard about it. They might not understand it. But at the end of the day, addiction is a reoccurring use of something or a reoccurring behavior despite negative consequences. And I made sure I was clear that it's not drugs and alcohol exclusively. You know, gambling, gaming, social media, shopping, eating, sex, right? All of these things can be used obsessively and compulsively to the point where they're causing harm, and you're like, you know you should stop, you kind of want to stop, but you find yourself having a hard time stopping, right? Because there's something that happens in the brain that you kind of lose impulse control, right? Another component of addiction is you may get away with it. A lot of people nip and sip and shuck and jive and go through high school and go through college, right? Have a blast. And then you grow up and you have kids and you move on, you have a happy life. But the next person kept going. It kept progressing for them. Why is it that two people that may have partied the same for 4 years of college, one guy went way down the road and the other person kind of just can still have a glass of wine and pay their bills and be decent humans, right? And we'll get into some of those factors. But once a person does cross that line, and as a person in long-term recovery, we often don't know until we're like 6 blocks past the line, you know? You're way past the line before you realize you've passed the line, and you have a hard time accepting you've passed the line. Denial, minimization, it's not that bad, I can stop if I want. But physically and biologically, what I've experienced is, once I crossed the line, I had a very hard time. I had an inability to control my use over a long period of time. So for me, it progressed to pills and heroin, and that stuff's hard and bad, and it's easy to say, I'll never do that again. But my mind would say, just have a couple beers, right? Stay away from the hard stuff. Smoke a little weed, no big deal. You're hyper. It'll, chill you out. In my experiences, I don't know when I crossed the line, but people in recovery say, once a cucumber becomes a pickle, can never be a cucumber again. And I agree with that, because I got pickled a long time ago, and I kept trying to be a cucumber, right? And I kept these failed experiments of trying to control my drinking on the weekends, trying to just smoke a little weed, trying to hang around with normal professional people that have their life together, like, my old friends were the problem. And my experience is, I don't know when I crossed the line, but I have an inability to consistently control my use. Once I start, I might get away with it for a month or 6 months, but every single time, without fail, it ends up in me full-blown addicted, can't stop, consequences are on me again. It's like, damn, dude, like, how did this happen again? Preoccupation, mental obsession. When I'm not drinking or using, all I'm thinking about is drinking or using. All I'm thinking about is how I'm not drinking or using. All I'm thinking about is like, what could I drink or use or do to distract me, to take the edge off? Because for someone like me, alcohol and drugs were like a self-medicating thing. And when you took it away, I wasn't by default better. You take away drugs and alcohol from someone like me and you don't give me healing, therapy, treatment. I have anxiety, depression, anger. I'm like not okay. I'm like a ball of like discomfort. And like I could only last for so long before my brain would trick me into picking up again. So over time you have cognitive changes, you just lie to yourself, you're completely delusional, you minimize everything, you lie, you justify, you come up with all these stories to try to make it make sense. But a normal person who's not that far advanced looks at you and says, Kevin, you're completely delusional. Like to a normal, healthy person, you hear someone talking and you can't believe that they believe what they're saying, but they do. Something about addiction hits a part of the brain that they lose touch with reality, specifically around drugs and alcohol. I'm talking can be good in every other area of their life. Still at work, still paying bills, military people, educated people, great parents, like decent humans, high functioning in all areas. But when it comes to drugs and alcohol, they keep believing the BS. They keep telling themselves stories, they keep falling for it, and the rest of us are just like, not the rest of us, because I'm one of them, maybe the rest of you, are like, what the hell is he doing? What? Like clearly we all know, this is a bad idea. And there goes Frank again, all banged up, you know what I'm saying? Why? Because he thinks he can drink Bud Light. No, he can't, Frank can't, So you get it. Dopamine, and I was happy, by the way, one of the kids, I was like, does anyone know what the limbic system does, right? The reward center, and the kid was like, it releases dopamine. I'm like, all right, dude. I was gassed. I was like, well, what does dopamine do? He's like, it makes you feel good. That's right, buddy. It does. It makes you feel good, and in normal people, that part of the brain is a great thing. It helps us stay alive, and I'll get into it more in another slide, but, laughing, eating, sex, exercise, normal things that we need to do to keep the human race alive, the brain releases dopamine. It makes us feel good. It's a reinforcement chemical that says, do that again, right? And drugs and alcohol release like 5,000 times more dopamine than any natural thing we could do. So naturally the brain's first response is, oh, that feels good, let's do it again. Like, the luckiest you could ever be is if you went and had like a tooth pulled and they gave you a Vicodin and you got sick to your stomach, nauseous, and wanted to throw up and hated it and never did it again in your life. Such a blessing. Because people like me, my first Vicodin was like, oh, this is great. Total different reaction. I don't know why. I don't know why I had that reaction. But when I put those things in my system, it gave me relief. I liked the effect that was produced by it. And then I chase that dopamine. I chase that release. And then it's like, it's weed, it's alcohol, it's pills, it's coke, it's whatever. I'm just chasing whatever I can chase to get that feeling again, to get that dopamine. And that happens only by exposure to drugs. So one of the things I said to the young people is like, there's only one way to guarantee you never become addicted. There's only one way. Is if you never use. Because if you expose yourself to it, you're just at risk. The goal here is, by the way, and this was brought up earlier, the goal here is not to say alcohol's the devil, weed's the devil, any of this. It's not to say, it's like, let's give them some education to, at a minimum, prolong first-time use. The reality is, at some point, they're all going to drink a beer. They're probably all going to try weed. They're going to maybe hit a vape or not, maybe they already are. But the goal here is like, if we can extend their exposure to that, we increase their chances of not becoming addicted because of the developing brain. The front of the brain is not fully developed until the mid-20s. That's the part of the brain that's, it does a lot of things, but is related to this. It's responsible for decision-making, impulse control, risk assessment. You know, decision-making, impulse control, risk assessment. That part of the brain's not fully wired yet until mid-20s. And when they vape, smoke weed, drink, or do anything else, it slows or stops that process of development. So the younger they use, the more at risk they are to continue to make bad decisions, to exhibit risky behavior, right? So the goal is not like, never drink the rest of your life. I told them too, and sorry, but I did say this. If you go on to school and you get a master's degree and you're 25 years old and you want to celebrate and have a glass of champagne, call me, dude. I'll buy you a glass of champagne at 25 years old after you got a master's degree, because your brain can literally handle it. Understand the message that I'm saying here. I'm just saying, don't do it now. And here's why. You know, just so you know that did come up. So if any of you call me in like 15 years, I got an IOU on a glass of champagne for a 25-year-old with an MBA. All right, so who's most at risk? Boom, number one. Why is this relevant? Why are we talking to young people? Why am I here? And again, I'll echo, I thank you for coming. For whatever reason you're here, you came, and there's other people that couldn't come for whatever reason, but you did come, and I appreciate that. Even if you have great kids, and there's very little chance of your kid ever having an issue, you're still here. And I appreciate that. But the truth is, anyone that uses any substance before the age of 25, because of what I just said, has an increased risk to have an issue, right? And I will tell you, and I will share, as a person in long-term recovery, my recovery date is July 2nd, 2010. I haven't drank a beer, smoked a joint, abused or misused a medication in over 11 and a half years. I've been to a lot of meetings, I've been to a lot of conferences, I've been to a lot of educational seminars, and I can tell you that when people share their story, if I just threw a number out there, I would say 75% of people say, my name's Kevin and I'm an alcoholic. I smoked my first joint at 13. I drank my first beer at 14. I'm telling you, 75% of the time, the story starts with the experimentation was anywhere between 12 and 16. You have the athlete that got an injury, that got addicted to pain meds. You have the regular adult that didn't become a problem drinker until later in life. But especially this younger population that's been totally taken out by opioids and fentanyl and all that, and you have them come in and they tell their story. First joint, first cigarette, first beer, 12 to 15 years old. So doesn't it make sense to get in front of 12 to 15-year-olds and at least try to have the conversation and say, hey, look, here's some information. I know you're good kids, this may never happen to you, but if the day comes and someone presents this to you, here's some information you should have. Don't just say no, and God bless Nancy Reagan, right? But like, just say no, like I'm already on an island, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, just say no. I'm totally ostracized from all the cool kids. Like, let's give them a little more than that. Don't just say no because I said so. Don't just say no because you're not old enough. Don't just say no because an adult said I said so. Why don't you say no because you're not comfortable taking that risk? Because your brain's not fully developed. Because maybe there's genetic predisposition in your family and you understand you're at an increased risk. Maybe because you're focused on your studies and you don't want to have, any cognitive impairment. Maybe you're an athlete. Like, give them more. You got to give them more. And even more so, if someone's like trying to give them the vape, instead of just saying no and running away, it's like, oh, no, thank you, I'm good, I don't want it for whatever reason. But, you want to go read a book, you want to go study, you want to go play basketball, like, you can still maybe be the positive influence in that person. You don't have to totally like shun someone. And obviously, there's degrees to that. If a person's way in a dark place, you obviously don't want your kids hanging with them. But like, this is real life. Every day, junior high school, middle school, high school, they're going to be approached. They're going to have, temptations. And they need to learn how to navigate that. We got to give them real skills. And I challenge you, and I did ask the teachers to revisit this with them, to practice refusal skills, role playing. I said, have that gun loaded, right? The day's gonna come. Might not be this year, it might be 4 years from now. Someday, someone's gonna approach you with something. And you're either gonna freeze up and not know what to do, or you're gonna buckle and give in to peer pressure because you wanna be accepted, or you're gonna be very well equipped with a rebuttal that says, no thanks man, I'm gonna pass because of X, Y, Z. And feel good about it and keep it moving, we gotta give them skills. So, who's most at risk? Anyone under the age of 25, anyone that's on multiple medications, anyone that has a history of mental illness or mental health conditions, anyone with ADHD, anxiety, depression, schizophrenic disorder, right? Anybody with a history of trauma. Biggest one here, anyone with a history, of substance use disorder. And people struggle with this, right? Science demonstrates through genetics that when you go to the doctor, right, they do a genogram and they say, has anyone in your family ever had hypertension? Has anyone in your family ever had diabetes, heart disease, cancer? They ask you all these things because science proves that if these things run in your family, it doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you're at an increased risk, right? If my family has none of that, it also doesn't mean I can't get it, but I'm at a lower risk than someone who comes from a family where everybody had diabetes. All the men had hypertension, it's just science. And science holds true for substance use disorder as well. And you don't break the cycle if you get into recovery. And I have friends in recovery that are like, nope, not talking to my kids about it. I brought them to a good school and a good community. I'm gonna love them, and they got God in their life, and they got exercise and extracurricular activities. And I'm like, hey, look, that's great. You got 2 beautiful kids, 2 healthy parents, 15, 17 years in recovery. But the truth remains that both of these kids are at a genetic predisposition, at a higher risk if they experiment, even with a cigarette, even with a vape. Even sugar can be dangerous with someone who's so genetically sensitive, and they refuse to have the conversation. They just say, nope, we believe we're gonna love them and protect them, and the environmental factor, and trust me, environment's a huge thing. A happy, healthy, safe home's a huge thing, and there's a slide on childhood experiences that we'll touch on, but genetics is genetics. Science proves it, so I challenge you, or I ask you, or maybe even beg you, if you have a history of alcoholism and drug addiction in your family, it doesn't matter if the person's been 20 years in recovery. If grandma's been in remission from cancer for 20 years, cancer still runs in the family, and I think it would be helpful for them to know, I don't know if things would have been different for me if I knew that, but I can tell you now that I have alcoholism on both sides of my family and no one ever talked about it. And when I look back at my own experience, I was a hyperactive kid with ADHD, with self-esteem and insecurity issues. I had parents that were kind of always fighting, and there was some kind of discord in the home. And God bless them, they're still married, they're good people, they're not bad humans, but they had their little marital issues when I was a kid that had a negative effect on me. And I was just like a little spaz, like a shaken soda can, right? And then one day, the older kids were like, hey, you want to smoke a joint? And I didn't want to smoke a joint, but I desperately wanted their approval. I desperately wanted to just be cool and hang with them and feel safe. And I smoked a joint, and I didn't even get high, but I felt like a part of them. And then I smoked again, and then I drank again. And you know what happened was, for the first time in my life, in 7th grade, by the way, I felt this false temporary sense of ease and comfort. It helped with the racing thoughts. It helped with the ADHD. Alcohol, you don't care what anybody thinks anymore. I'm 4'2" without a pubic hair on my body, right? Give me a couple drinks, I'm 6'5" with a goatee and an axe. I'm ready to kill people, you know what I mean? That's what alcohol did for me. And so what do? I keep drinking, I keep smoking, and slowly over a period of time, it didn't happen overnight, like I kept progressing. And this is all retrospect. I had no idea when it was happening. People tried to intervene in my life. I started getting in trouble. I got arrested for the first time at 16, smoking a joint at the airport. And everybody's like, yeah, you know, and I'm like, no way, never happened to me. I know what an alcoholic, I'll never be that. And you can't see it when you just can't see it. It's not possible for, you know, a 15-year-old kid to comprehend what's happening. And them saying, don't do this, we're afraid, don't do this, we love you, you got so much potential, that had no depth and weight, it didn't stick. Now maybe, if they got real with me and was like, listen, your uncle, your grandfather, and your grandfather's grandfather died of cirrhosis, so, you know what I'm saying, died in a car, because that's the truth. The truth is my mother's father died as a result of injuries related to a drunk driving accident. My father's father died as a bartender, active alcoholic, cirrhosis of the liver. Right? And this apparently runs rampant through my family. But they never talked about that because we're embarrassed. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, we don't talk about that. Like, you know, we'll just focus, you know, keep the curtains closed, we keep the problems in the house. And again, I don't fault my parents. I don't know if I would have responded to that. But now looking back, that is a factor. I used before the age of 25. I had ADHD. I had some family stuff going on. And I had a whole history of alcoholism that I had no idea about. I was primed for addiction. This is a study that's been happening for, I don't know, a few years now. There's a lot of people that can speak much more intelligently on it than me, but I thought it was worth mentioning. There's this guy, Ed Jacobs. He's like the director of special projects for Plymouth County District Attorney's Office. Great guy. There's a bunch of police chiefs and social workers that run around and do a whole presentation just on this for an hour and a half. But I just wanted to give you a snapshot of, right, because the bullet said, who's at risk? Well, there is a study that shows adverse childhood experiences, they're called ACEs. They created this scale, and they've identified a bunch of common things that people with substance use disorder say they've experienced. And so what we do as a preventative measure is we try to identify young people that have any of these ACEs, and we say, well, if they have these things going on, we know statistically they're at increased risk. One of them is if they've experienced any sexual assault, physical assault, mental abuse, even if they haven't experienced it, but if they've witnessed it, they've witnessed violence, if they've had one parent die, two parents die, suicide, attempted suicide, moved more than once in the formative years before graduating high school, grew up in a divided home, a divorced home, children that have found out that they were adopted, sometimes that has a psychological impact on them, and there's this whole list of things. And none of those things in themselves say someone's going to be addicted to drugs. And some people that have experienced all of those things just have resilience and process differently and grow up to be well-adjusted, amazing humans. But the data shows that there's a very common theme with people with substance use disorder, that the more of these they had, it seemed like the more at risk they are. So again, we just got to be aware, like, and this may not apply to you or any of your kids, but this is something we talk about, like, so they're under the age of 25, they're already at risk. If they have any anxiety or other mental health conditions, they're at risk. If they've experienced any one of the ACEs, and when you get home, you can Google it, they have like this is not very clean, it's a talking point, but they have like a whole format where they ask a series of questions to young people. Have you ever experienced this? And there's a score. And based on the score, they determine how much at risk that young person is. And so there's a lot of prevention work and a lot of front-end initiatives that say, it's hard to take a full-blown alcoholic, homeless person addicted to heroin and rehabilitate them and change their life. Though it happens every day, it's difficult. I feel blessed and lucky to be alive. But time and energy should be spent on diverting people from getting down that path. So the more research and the more information that we have that gives us a clue of like who these at-risk people may be, then we gotta get them. We gotta talk to them. We gotta love them up. We gotta help them build self-esteem. We gotta help them process whatever may be going on. We gotta give them happy, healthy, holistic ways to manage whatever they're struggling with, right? And just give them support and resilience. And then they can get past, those first early years where they're most at risk to experiment. And again, like I said, if you can make it past 21, if you can make it to 25 before you start experimenting, your body and brain can handle it so much better. It's really about this early age prevention work. Like just, being a kid is hard enough. Being a kid was hard enough for me. Now you throw social media in there, it's a nightmare, you know what I'm saying? Like, I had low self-esteem just watching MTV raps, you know what I'm saying? Like, now, you got Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, and you got this guy and this girl with the perfect angle, with the fake filter, with the fake ass, with the fake lashes, and like, on their best day when they won the lottery and graduated college, and that's what they post, right? It's like, oh my God, I'll never be that good, you know what I'm saying? How can you ever live up to that? And that's what you see. And even me, I don't post my worst day. I post a beautiful picture of my kids at the park. People think I have this amazing life. I'm like, no, I'm actually going through it. I've had a rough year. You wouldn't know by my social media, right? And unfortunately, at least I'm aware of that reality. Young people are not so much aware. They base their own value on what they see all day, every day. And what they see all day, every day says they're not good enough, they're not doing well enough, they're not pretty enough, they're not handsome enough, they're not strong enough. And there's actually a lot of data that proves people that spend more time on social media are more depressed. There's a whole study on it. You can Google that as well. So it's just a whole added complexity that our young people are dealing with, right? And now the whole sexuality thing, and that's a whole thing that I'm not even really well equipped to talk about. I'm assuming some of you are not either, right? You know, and the kids are coming home and they don't know where they stand, and you want to be supportive, and like, sometimes I have conversations. I say, look, I'm honestly not the guy. Like, let me connect you with someone that's very well versed in this conversation, right? And so it's challenging. It's challenging to be a human and an adult, don't get me wrong, but like, to be a young person in this society is like extra challenging. So what does that look like? What that looks like is laughing, exercise, playing video games, like certain things that gave us enjoyment, release just enough dopamine to make us feel good. Well, when you smoke a joint and watch a movie, 5,000 times more dopamine. When you go and drink a little bit before going to the dance, 5,000 times more dopamine, right? And then what happens is, and this was my exact experience, I started associating watching a comedy, watching a movie, going to a dance, going to a sporting event with using a certain substance. And I would use different substances to enhance different situations. And what happened over a period of time is, like, if I didn't use the substance, it just wasn't fun. The regular entry-level dopamine burst I would get from just going to a high school football game was like, this sucks, you know what I'm saying? Everything sucks. The game sucks, the school sucks, everything sucks, you know? It does, it just sucks, everything sucks. Because, you know why? I'm not getting that juice that I need. And once you make that connection that everything sucks because you're abstinent and you have nothing in your system, and if you smoke a joint, oh, this is amazing now, and if I drink a cup, oh, this is amazing now. Now there's this wicked bad negative correlation connection to substances and fun. And now I need them to enjoy life. Because I've been so overstimulated, when I don't have them, I can't actually enjoy. And that's when you see withdrawal. You see kids that lose interest in sports. They lose interest in their hobbies. They lose it because those things don't give the juice. They become obsessed and preoccupied with the things that give the juice, the burst of dopamine. So it takes a period of time to get the substances out of someone's system and their body to re-regulate and stop producing all the regular chemicals. It's not just dopamine, it could be serotonin. Oxytocin is a chemical, it's called the love chemical. When someone loves you or hugs you, like they say, even walking into grandma's house and smelling grandma's famous apple pie can actually trigger a chemical release in your brain that just makes you feel safe. They call it the love chemical, oxytocin. So we're very sensitive to all these things, and when we bring in these outside substances that trigger all these chemicals, we just throw off all our natural body's reactions, and it takes time to get it all out of your system and re-regulate. There's actually a term called PAWS, post-acute withdrawal syndrome, that left untreated for up to a year, a person who's just been through a detox can completely be suffering from irregular mood swing, irregular appetite, irregular energy, irregular motivation. I'm gonna go to college and conquer the world. I don't want to leave my house. I can't sleep all day. I can't eat all day. Like literally physical, mental, spiritual warfare. And you just see this up and down. And that's why a lot of people have so many regressions and they can't just get it. Why can't they get it? Because when you sent them to detox, you took away their best friend. You took away their medicine. You took away all they knew, and now they're like this. And they can only hang on for so long. They need relief. So recovery is not about abstinence. Recovery is about, in the absence of the chemical, how do I experience peace? How do I deal with anxiety? How do I find happiness, joy, purpose in life? Like, I now have to get all that crap out of my system, let my body reboot, and totally relearn how to experience life the way that it's supposed to be experienced. I also, for me, had to totally unlearn a bunch of false belief systems and lies that I told myself and things that I thought were important, and like, you know, living my life to please other people. And it's like, oh my God, so much energy is spent worrying about the Joneses and what this one thinks and what that one thinks. And it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna run my race. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm loud, I'm extra, I'm annoying, I'm self-seeking. I love this attention, right? It works good for what I do, but it's not always good all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. And I'm not gonna change who I am. I love who I am. I'm grateful to be in recovery. I'm passionate about what I do. And some people will love me and some people won't, and that's okay. I'd be like, oh, I'm the realest guy in New Bedford. So fake. I'm gonna be a thug around the thugs. I'm gonna do kick flips around the skaters. I'm gonna be like rock and roll with the rockers. Like, literally, I was so fake. I was such a chameleon. I'd be whoever I had to be, whoever I was around. I was into what you were into. I'd be nodding and acting like it was cool. I had no idea what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Because I just desperately needed to feel okay. I needed to know that you liked me and I was safe. And that's an awful place to live, because you can't possibly ever satisfy everyone. You be in a room right here, 40 people, everyone can walk, that guy was amazing. One guy, I'll be for weeks obsessed about the one person who had something negative to say, right? Now it's like, hey, this is my truth, this is my experience, just sharing what I know. And if you take something out of it, great. If you don't agree with everything I say, it's okay too. Like, we can all have our own experience. I had to be taught that though. You know, at 31 years old, when I got into recovery and I was doing step work and therapy and all this like introverted looking, I'm like, oh my God, like the world dominated me. You know, I was dominated by the world. And a lot of our young people have the same experience. Low self-esteem, desperate need for approval, you know, don't feel good about themselves, don't feel pretty enough, strong enough, smart enough. And if we don't find a way to get right with that, you seek escape. You seek release from that. It's not always going to be drugs and alcohol. It could be cutting. It could be eating. It could be a lot of different things. It's just to try to distract from the pain, the internal mental pain that some people are experiencing. All right, we did enough on the limbic system. So I threw a couple slides in here because it's worth talking about. A lot of people totally say, yeah, Kevin, we definitely don't want our kids to shoot heroin. But they totally minimize marijuana, alcohol, and vaping. And I'm not telling anybody how to parent. I'm just stating the facts. The brain and body does not care or discriminate on what the substance is. It doesn't care if marijuana is legal in Massachusetts now. It doesn't care if the Percocet is prescribed. When the drug comes into the system and releases the dopamine, it's all about effect. And the body doesn't know the difference. And a lot of people minimize marijuana, especially, well, it's legal now. So what? Alcohol's legal. It kills more people every year than every other drug. Oxycontin's legal. Percocets are still legal. They still cause a lot of harm, you know? But there's this narrative, especially with young people, that, oh, it can't be that bad if it's legal now. And then the whole other thing to it, and again, I'm not telling you how to live, but like Uncle Frank, who used to be like the closet weed smoker, is all of a sudden like out with the John Deere tractor smoking a jibba, right, cutting the grass. He's out smoking his, you know, weed flag now. He's got his card, he's all legit, and like nobody says nothing. And whatever, Uncle Frank, that's good for you. No, I don't care. However, what message does that send to the young person? Uncle Frank's the man. He's my favorite uncle. He's a great guy. He owns a good business. He's successful. He's intelligent. And he smokes weed when he cuts the grass. Can't be that bad, right? So that's been some of the negative effect of the legalization. Again, I don't have opinion. If you can smoke weed and pay your bills and go to soccer practice, good for you, dude. I don't care. This isn't about adults. This is about, you know, adolescent education. But the image, kids very much mirror what they see. And they interpret what they see. So, moving on. I'm 42 years old. I'm probably older than a lot of you. I hate to admit that. I thought I was the cool young guy at one point. I don't know what the hell happened. But when I was their age, right, it was like the Mexican brick with the seeds, right? It came like the size of a phone book. It was dry. It was nasty. You had to peel it apart. When you smoked it, seeds were popping out of the joint, right? This was bad. This was low quality marijuana. It was like 12% THC. This beautiful, scientific, lab-created marijuana is so clean and so strong that it's become a little dangerous for young people, right? If you're an adult and you can use responsibly, again, good for you, no judgment. Some of this marijuana is 27%, some of it's 47% THC. And when you get into the edibles and the gummies, and some people are even taking really good, strong marijuana and then compressing it down to resin, resin can be up to 92% THC. And the THC is what gets you high, and THC has the ability to trigger psychosis. And there have been studies shown in young people that had no history of mental illness, and even in their immediate family, their parents, no history of mental illness, but they had a dormant, recessed, schizoaffective disorder gene, and the strong level of THC triggered it. And you're seeing people under the age of 20 showing up in the ER, in psychosis, hallucinations, and totally compromised because of how strong that it is. And so I just say that because, you know, I used to even think it's just weed, like whatever. Everybody's gonna smoke weed, they're gonna run their course, like yeah, it's part of the process and da. Yeah, I mean, I get that, you know, parenting philosophy, you know, but at the same time, like, this isn't the weed that I used to smoke. You know, this stuff is another level. It's more dangerous, it's more risky, you know, so it's just worth bringing up. And then alcohol, again, I just say, let's not forget about alcohol, because so many people die from opioids that it's like awful and scary, but the truth is that alcohol kills more people every year than any other drug. Alcohol-related accidents, illnesses, and diseases kill more people every other year, but it's a slow burn. You don't see the 22-year-old girl from Nantucket die of an alcohol overdose, right? It's the 50, 60, 70-year-old person. You could drink almost your whole life and maybe get by, but it slowly starts to destroy your body. So it doesn't get as much media attention, but the truth is, alcohol is very dangerous. And there's another slide, I think it's the next slide. We'll now get into opioids, but the next slide says, you know, everybody's like, oh, it's just weed, it's just alcohol. Yeah, no kidding. I was just smoking weed and just drinking alcohol. But the truth is, 97%, the number is 93, I think. 93% of people that are reported addicted to heroin say they didn't start with heroin. They started with the alcohol, they started with the marijuana. So it's like, yeah, to some people it might just be that, and they might go through the phase, but like, you know, I got 2 little daughters now. You know, I'm late to the party. I got a 2.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. They're beautiful. They're a blessing. They're also a handful, right? And both parents are in recovery. And I have a legitimate, solid fear about the acute risk that they have because both of her parents are in recovery from substance use disorder. You know, and it's like, I think about that and I'm like, I'm not willing to take that risk with them. I'm not willing to take the risk of like, let's just see what happens. And, you know, they could be fine. Because of what I know about addiction and because of what I know about science, I know they're at such an increased risk rather than little Billy that comes from a perfectly clean, healthy family. I'm going to have that age-appropriate conversation. I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to do my best to prolong first-time use of anything as long as I can, because science demonstrates that my 2 beautiful daughters are at an increased risk if they experiment. You know, so like, how did this happen? How did this country get so blown out? Well, first of all, we're 5% of all the humans on the planet, the United States. 5% of all the humans on the planet. Yet we consume 80% of all the pain medicine that's manufactured in the world. The most prescribed medication of all medications, not just pain medications, the most prescribed medication in the United States is Vicodin, a pain medicine. And the United States is a consumer of 93% of all the Vicodin that's manufactured in the world. So it's very, very much a philosophical thing. It's a way we treat pain thing. Like a lot of other countries are like, pain medicine is like way end of life so you're not miserable when you die. It's like acupuncture, exercise, you know, holistic therapies and teas and herbs, and they'll put you through the ringer of all these other kind of methods and really try to encourage, you know, holistic treatment to all kind of things, anxiety, sleep, weight, pain. And then like, if all those measures are unsuccessful, then, you know, they're humane. But we're in this country, we kind of tend to go to the prescription first. We write a script first. You know, so not all, a lot of doctors, it's a lot better than it was. A lot of people are very much more holistic than they used to be. But and this is a very forward state. You go to other parts of the country, very old school. You got doctors that went to school for 10 years that took 2 classes on addiction. It's not even their fault. They're not bad people trying to hurt people. They're just doing what they do. They weren't given the education, you know. So how did some of them stop? 36% got a prescription. 68% say they got their first opiate from a friend or family member's medicine cabinet. This is called a National RX Take Back Day. If you see the flyers or whatever, go in your cabinets. Anything for pain, it says may cause dizziness, like anything that could cause an effect. If you don't need it, get it. throw it away, dispose of it at your local police station. Sergeant Kevin Marshall is the man on Nantucket. He's a friend of mine, a colleague. He does a lot of training and crisis intervention training for first responders. He'll gladly take it from you. And if you're a citizen and those symptoms return, your doctor will gladly write you another script. Like, get it out of the house, you know. And there's the 93%. And here's always a big thing. Look at that bottom slide, 20 to 34-year-old. So in Massachusetts in the last 5 years, over 10,000 people have died from an opioid overdose. 10,000 people. In the last 5 years in the United States, 390,000 people have died from an opioid overdose. And again, I used to have this vision of what those people looked like. Of the 390,000 people that have died in the last 5 years in the United States, the biggest demographic that's been impacted by that is the 20 to 34-year-old white male from a middle-class family. It's our kids, it's our neighbors, that's our families. I never know when the emotion's gonna come. But like, that's why I'm so passionate about this, because we gotta stop believing the lie that it can't happen here or it can't happen to us. It's those people that I used to have that vision of, they're the small percentage of the demographic being affected. It's good people from good families, educated, loving. They may not even have all those ACEs and those traumas and stuff. There could be no rhyme or reason for it. A young person before the age of 25 that experiments with anything, with no family history, no trauma, none of those other things, by nature of substances, can easily become addicted because their brain can't handle it. Those other things just amplify the risk. That's why I talk about them. You know, so, middle class family. Some symptoms you can look for. If you're not aware, glossy eyes could be a lot of different things. Bloodshot eyes, over-dilated pupils. When you see their pupils like this, it's usually some kind of upper and amphetamine. It could be cocaine. It could be methamphetamine. Even a lot of people are misusing Adderall. Adderall has a very similar chemical composition as methamphetamine. You know, in the right dose, it's an effective medication for ADHD, but like sometimes it's hard to find that dose, and a lot of people misuse it. A lot of college kids are using it. They call it like high-class cocaine. They're actually sniffing Adderall because it has a similar effect. When you see the pinned pupils really small, even in bright light, that's usually an opiate. And then you can kind of see, like, if you see the scratching, that's usually a painkiller opiate thing, heroin, fentanyl, Percocet. When you see them like lethargic and kind of like having a hard time staying awake, nodding out, that's usually an opiate. When people are drunk, it's usually pretty clear that they're drunk, you know. Slurred speech and all that. And then when you see like the jumpy, irritable, fidgety, you know, there's all these different signs. So if you see any of these things, my cards are back there, by the way, my business cards, my cell phone's on it, my email's on it. There's some brochures about marijuana, there's some brochures about the brain, and there's like a little pamphlet that says, "Is my teen using?" If you have questions and you need help, this is not a one and done. Call me. If I'm not the guy, I'll connect you with somebody. You know, we have Candace here as well. You can reach out to Danielle or Claire. And this is like, it's a lot to take in an hour, you know. And I don't want to leave you with, all right, that has the information, have a nice life. You know, it's like, well, then what? You know, kind of, well, what do we do with that? All right, you got us, Kev. Move forward. We got buy-in. You know, what do we got to do? You know, stop leaving us hanging, right? So the jewel and the vape. That's an awful picture. I really need to update that. It's really bad, but that's just what some of them look like. The most common one is kind of this, the jewel. It looks like a flash drive if you don't know any better. And again, if your kid's vaping and juuling and all that, the level of the level of nicotine that's in these little jewels is like 3 packs of cigarettes. Literally, if you take a couple whacks. If you don't smoke and you took a couple whacks off a jewel, you'd get lightheaded or throw up. That's how strong it is. And it's so strong, and these young people are getting so addicted to it that they're literally obsessing in class. They can't wait till class ends so they can go to the bathroom to hit the vape because they need that dopamine. Here's the bad news. You can minimize it all you want. You can say it's just a fad, and I'm not saying you, I'm just talking out loud. If we minimize it and say it's just a fad and roll the dice, here's the bad news. If they get addicted to that dopamine and they start obsessing about that feeling they get from the vape, by nature of biology, every day that goes by, my body builds a tolerance to every substance that doesn't belong in my system. If you've ever had any kind of prolonged pain, right, they start you off with ibuprofens, then maybe 800s, then perk 5s, and they slowly keep going up. What most people don't understand is that, besides degenerative stuff and that's progressive, like, often the pain's not getting worse. It's just your body's building a tolerance to the pain meds. They're not as effective over a period of time. So they got to keep bringing you up, bringing you up, bringing you up. Well, after 10 years, if you don't find another way to manage that pain, sooner or later the doctor's going to say, you're on morphine patches. This is as high as it goes. There's nothing else I can do for you. So it's the same with young people experimenting with marijuana, alcohol, and vaping. They're getting that sensation right now. Well, I can tell you right now, in 2 years from now, that vape is not going to hardly give them that dopamine rush that it's giving them now. And that kid that put them onto the vaping, that's now smoking weed or taking pills or eating gummies, is going to say, oh yeah, that vaping was that's 2022. I'm doing this now. And that was my same experience. Oh, just smoke a little weed here and there. I'm like, silly, 2 hits off a joint and 2 beers. I'm like, yeah, best life. 2 years later, it's like a whole joint and drinking Cool Blue 101. And 4 years later, it's like I need the weed and the alcohol and the Valium. I wasn't trying to get worse. I was trying to be the same. It just took more. Over a period of time, it took more to get that same effect. So that's the real danger with the vaping right now. The vaping right now is they're getting addicted to that dopamine, and over a period of time, their body is going to fight that, and it's not going to do it for them. And if they're not afraid of nicotine and they're not afraid of vaping, what I found was my parents said, don't do drugs, weed's bad, don't, because I said so, right? I smoked a joint and drank a beer. It was amazing. Like, what else are you lying to me about, right? These are my friends. They help me out. They help me find something that makes me feel good. You lie to me. You say that it's bad. It's great. Also, I watch you drink wine all the time. You know what I'm saying? And so my mind at a young age was like, well, I got to be more open-minded to these substances, because these people, adults, said that this is bad. But in fact, in my experience, these things are great. And I was willing to try just about anything you put in front of me, because up to that point, everything someone put in front of me, I enjoyed. And guess what? Next thing you know, you're experimenting, and it could lead you down the bad road. Not to say that every kid that's vaping right now is going to become a drug addict, because I'm not God and I don't know that. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll get sick of it. Maybe they'll outgrow it. But these are the facts and these are my experience. Like, this is my experience. Like, it could very easily get worse. It's better off to chop it down now. To stay focused, increased blood pressure, increased heart rate. Here was a statistic from 2018. It said 3.6 million U.S. middle school and high school students reported that they used an e-cigarette in the past 30 days. 20% of high school students and 4.9% of middle school students reported that they've at least tried an e-cigarette in the last 30 days. So these are some of the things that, this is like the last slide. These are some of the things that I feel like need to continue on, and I could probably even do like a 30-minute smaller specific on this. I think would be valuable. Even if it's on Zoom one day, you could do it from home. Like, we could do some follow-up stuff. You don't always have to come here for an hour and a half on a rainy Thursday night, but I think to keep the conversation going, again, have a plan. So I said that to them, and I'm gonna say it to you, have a plan. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna have this conversation? What can you do? And it's amazing to me because, again, I can say now my kids are very little, so I'm not dealing with 6, 7, 8 yet, but I can already see how I love my daughters so much. I just want them to be happy, and I just want them to like me. And sometimes I see with my friends that are 40, most will have 20-year-old kids. Some of my friends are already grandparents because they had kids in high school, you know what I mean? I'm real late to the party here. But what I see is, because they had kids so young, and they so desperately want to be the cool parent, it's hard to discipline. It's hard to hold the hard line. It's hard to have your daughter mad at you when you broke up with their mother at a young age. And I see my friends struggling with their young daughters, and they kind of compromise things that they believe in because they want her to stay close. He loves her, and so it's hard. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm definitely not a parenting guru. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm still just trying to figure it out, like some of you probably, right? But we have to have a plan. And practice role playing, like I said, have the loaded gun. It's not real life for them to never be approached. So how can we give them skills and tools to have that response? So if someone comes up to them, they don't freeze up. They can very quickly say, oh, nah, man, see, I would, but, you know, I'm really focused on school right now, and in my experience, that kind of messes with your thinking and your focus. So like, maybe not right now. You know, it could even be like not right now. It could be not right now every day for the next 5 years. Like whatever you got to do to avoid that one-time use, you know. It could be like, oh no, like I had a cousin that had a real big problem. I know it runs in my family. I'm not willing to take that risk. Or I'm really focused on my athletics, and I'm afraid to compromise any of my body growth or development. You know, whatever it is, I don't know. Like whatever that person, every kid is an individual, right? Whatever they're comfortable saying. And I even joked with them, I'm like, if you want to be smart and you want to really throw off the hippie cool kid that's trying to get you to smoke, when they come up to you and they're like, yo, hey man, you want to just, be like, nah, I got a genetic predisposition, my prefrontal cortex is not fully developed yet, I'm at an extreme risk, I can't do it. And the guy like, whatever man, you know what I'm saying? You know, he can't handle that, it's too much to process, right? You guys were just like, whoa, what the hell is on, right? But you can have fun with it, whatever it is, I don't care if it's like, no, because people that do that are bad people. I don't care. Just have a preloaded, pre-locked response to when someone's going to approach you. Because if they haven't been approached, I guarantee you within the next couple of years, they will be approached by somebody with something. And I'll give you this last gem and I'll shut up. And I told them I was going to give you this. Some of them I probably like it because it's an easy out. Some of them are probably horrified if they're already like flirting with ideas. But if you want to make it easy for them, buy drug tests. Buy breathalyzers, keep them on the refrigerator, keep them in the bathroom, and let them know, listen, I'm going to drug test you and I'm going to breathalyze you if you look funny at all. And if in fact you get caught, the iPhone's gone. PS, the Xbox, gone. That is life crashing to these people. You have so much power, right? And where my ADD kind of took me off the rails talking about my friend being a parent is, sometimes parents feel like, well, what can I do? She's 15 and she's got a mind of her own. Bro, she lives in your house. You pay for her cell phone. You drive her everywhere. What are you talking about? You have all the power. Now, if they're 25 years old with a good job paying for their own apartment and their own car and their own cell phone, it is harder to get leverage because they don't need you. They're independent. But at this age, you have so much power. At the risk of them being mad at you, maybe, right? But you have all this power. So I told them the easiest out is, you know, if someone comes up to you and is like, hey, you want to smoke a joint? You want to drink beer? Like, listen, man, I would, but my parents, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They heard this kid, Kevin Rosario, speak. They're telling me I'm going to shoot heroin. There's breathalyzers and drug tests all over my house. Dude, I can't take that risk. I'm not trying to lose my iPhone. You know what I'm saying? And dude's like, man, that sucks, bro. I'm sorry. You know, and he'll keep it moving. The kid can still be cool. He didn't say no. Like, you know, can keep the reputation. And it's not about whether I want to or not. I can't because this stupid kid, Kevin Rosario, came to my school, scared the crap out of my family, and now there's drug tests and urines and labs and breathalyzers and Q-tips all over the house, guy. I can't do it, right? So you can do that for them. You can literally take the decision out of their hands for them by leaving here and having this conversation. It's like, I'm going to do you a solid. I am buying drug tests. I am buying breathalyzers. I am getting a copy of the PowerPoint. And if you even look funny any day of your life, I'm hitting you. And if you even get caught for marijuana or nicotine, you have to buy certain drug tests that test for nicotine and Adderall and the spices and all the other weird random stuff, like the regular like 8 panels will just be like cocaine, marijuana, alcohol. Like you got, if you want to really broaden the net, you got to buy the ones that have all these things that they could potentially be doing. But just tell them, like, I'm going to do you a solid. I am, in fact, going to do this randomly. And you should do it at least once, just to instill the idea that you're willing to do it. And they will have that as their tool. That's their biggest tool. It's not even whether they want to or not. They literally can't, because you guys told them, if this happens, it's a wrap. You know, so that's all I got, guys. Thank you so much. I'm open to questions.